You are listening to the Motherhood Podcast, episode number 68. We at Motherhood believe that there's no way to be a perfect mom, but many ways to be a good one. Our content is judgment-free within the context of evidence-based research. Hi, Alexa. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Of course. So could you tell us a little bit about who you are?
Sure. My name is Alexa Hyman. I live in Chicago. I'm 26. I have a almost 2-year-old daughter, and I work in financial services. I guess I could start when I went to a small liberal arts college, and I thought I wanted to study psychology and had always loved to write, but was never thinking that I wanted to do it professionally in any capacity. So in my own stubborn way, I took a journalism class because I figured I would hate it and I could just rule it out. I took it and I had this amazing professor who just really took an interest in me. It was a small class, so he was able to give me one-on-one time. And he was like, hey, you're actually really good at this. You need to pursue it. And I was like, really? And he was like, yeah, I want you to write for the paper. And I started writing for the paper and I started getting really into it. And it was that little bit of someone believing in me that kind of really launched me into really pursuing something that I loved. And so I did a journalism internship. I also was studying business. So I, did an internship in finance and graduated from college having absolutely no idea what I wanted to do because I had exercised the right and the left side of my brain. So, typical 22-year-old confusion, and ended up taking a job out in LA that was a nonprofit digital marketing agency that allowed me to project and account manage. So I use kind of that business side of my brain, but also manage creative projects. So I was able to do a little bit of both. And now my life took a little bit of a turn. I ended up moving back from LA to Chicago, and my paths crossed with an old mentor of mine. And I ended up helping him start his wealth management firm here. And the cool thing is I actually got to help to build the brand and build the social presence and work on a lot of those creative elements while also still, working on operations and client relationships and all of that. So, that's kind of the way I see, how my career has evolved. And it's really cool how it's all kind of come full circle.
That's really cool how with both jobs, both out in LA and then now in Chicago, both jobs that you've had since college, that you've been able to use both the creative and the business aspect. I really love that you've been able to do that. That's great.
Yeah, it's been a total surprise to me.
So I heard you mention that you have a 2-year-old or almost 2-year-old. Tell us about your journey as a mom.
Yeah. So I was living out in LA. I was 23, surfing on the weekends, going camping, and ended up finding myself unexpectedly pregnant, which, still when I tell this story, I'm like, man, it kind of takes my breath away a little. It was just the hardest thing that I've ever had to face in my whole life. The scariest moment, week, months of my life. It's hard to put into words, but basically I thought that, at that moment, I thought that the whole world was my oyster. And in a very quick second, it felt like the world was closing in on me. And long story short, within a week, I went through a lot of mental debates about how I was going to do this and move forward. But I ended up, saying like, yes, I'm going to have this baby and I'm going to do it the best way I can. And started saving a lot of money, and I wasn't going to get paid maternity leave, and ended up moving back to Chicago, where my, family supported me and, friends and Renly's dad, even though we didn't end up together. And gosh, it's just been a crazy journey. A lot of growth, a lot of letting go. She was born in October of 2017 and ended up, it was just the greatest blessing of my entire life. What turned into the scariest moment of my entire life ended up being the best thing that's ever happened to me. And, now she's almost 2 and she has this mop of red curly hair and, just a wild, sassy personality. And she's just my best friend in the whole world. So it's just, it's been an incredible experience. Definitely one that I never expected, but, so that's how my life ended up taking a turn. I thought I'd be out in LA for a while and, just ultimately came to the decision that I needed to be close to home and needed to be close to family and be, emotionally supported through that experience. And, it was the best decision for me because I was always so independent, but you quickly realize when you go through something really hard that you need to lean on people. And so here I am. I'm a working mom. I work full time, lived with my parents for a little while to get on my feet, but moved to Chicago a little over a year ago downtown. And somehow I make it work. I have a nanny 4 days a week. She goes to my mom's on Fridays, and it's definitely tough, but I wouldn't have it any other way because whatever I can do for her, is all that matters.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. I can't even imagine how hard it is to have to tell that story, but I love just how redemptive it is and how you went from it being the scariest thing to the best thing in your life. Would you mind sharing what made you decide to actually carry the pregnancy, kind of that emotional journey? Because I know a lot of women in your situation might not have taken that step that you did. And I think that that's really brave that you did make that decision. So would you mind talking a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. Like I said, when I first found out, it was absolutely terrifying. I was in shock. I had some wonderful friends around me, but a lot of the influence around me was, hey, you don't have to do this. You can just keep living your life and keep moving forward with all those resumes you just sent out to all these agencies, for your next role. And, you don't have to put it all on hold. And to be honest, looking back, that was really hard to hear, even though, and this is very important, people's best intentions were at heart, because I think that that's the natural reaction is I will support you no matter what. And that's important. But what it felt at the time was, well, if I decide to keep this baby, will you support me? Or if I don't, will you support me? And so you almost need to be spoken to in absolutes. And so there was some pressure, of, I think, whether or not to have an abortion. And I ended up scheduling an abortion for a week after I found out. And I just kind of shut down internally a little bit. I was like, okay, I guess that's what I'm going to do. And I'm not even going to think about it. But at the same time, I couldn't stop thinking about it. And every time I thought about what that decision was going to mean, I just felt this emptiness that I couldn't let go of. The best way I could describe it is I felt a grief that was far worse than the pit in my stomach that I already felt. And so it just stuck with me. And the morning before I was supposed to have the abortion, I ran into a friend, and I apologize if you've already heard this story, but I can't help but tell this story when I tell, about this journey. But I ran into an old friend, and he said he had heard the news. Someone had leaked it to him. I hadn't told him, and neither had Renly's dad. And he looked at me And he said, "You can do this." And I was like, "What?" And he was like, "You can do this. And if you don't want to do this, I'll adopt your baby." And I just like, I remember just being completely flooded with emotion. It felt like a huge heat wave. And I just remember dropping my bags to the floor, falling to my knees, and just feeling so overwhelmed because I had like closed this door in my mind. Even though I didn't want to close it, I had closed it in my mind. Like, I'm just going to do this and it's just going to be over. And he cracked that door back open for me. And I was just overwhelmed with that little crack in my heart. And all along this time, I had felt this tiny inkling of joy about being pregnant. And I also couldn't let that go. I knew that, this moment in my life was supposed to be happy, and I was supposed to be, just celebrated with open arms. And even though I didn't feel that, I just felt it in my heart that it was supposed to be a beautiful moment, and that it was a beautiful thing. And I call it this little inkling of joy. And so when he said this to me, I just felt that little bit of joy just like spark. And I was like, and so my heart, I just felt like, okay, maybe I can do this. And I walked away from the conversation with like kind of a rejuvenation. And I was like, my mind was just racing because I was like, what am I going to do? And I ended up having a meeting with someone that I worked with, and he kind of got the news out of me. And I looked at him and I was like, he said, well, I don't think that you are. And I said, no, I know that I am, meaning I'm pregnant. And he looked at me and he just came around the table and he was like, Alexa, there's a baby inside of you. And I just lost it. I was like, because that was the first time since I found out I was pregnant that in that week that someone looked at me and celebrated it and actually responded the way that we respond to all women telling us that they're pregnant for the first time, or any time. And it was just, I just couldn't stop crying. I just knew immediately that I could do it. And I felt so much peace. And I immediately got on the phone and canceled the appointment and never looked back. Never, not even for a second, no matter how hard things got. And now, man, I try not to think about what my life would look like if I had made that decision, because it's now filled with so much joy. Even though it's hard, like it's very hard, but it the pros and the good just outweighs all of the bad. So that's my little story.
That's so great that you had two amazing friends, well, one friend and then your coworker that just surrounded you with hope and joy. That's so incredible. And yeah, it just told you exactly what you needed to hear. That makes me think of, since you have been in that situation of, facing an unplanned pregnancy and, the possibility of being a single mom, how best can other people support people like that? And also, what can we say? What can we do? It sounds like, being joyful about it is one thing that really helped you. But is there anything else that that, I don't know, someone like myself, I've definitely had a couple friends tell me that they were unexpectedly pregnant, even if they were married or whatnot. And maybe you can shed some light on that.
Yeah. It's definitely a really difficult situation to deal with, I think, as a friend. And everyone is different, but from my experience being in those shoes and then my experience talking to women who are in those shoes, I think, the number one thing is what I said, which is I think I think that a woman should be like congratulated immediately, even though I think you should also acknowledge that this is really hard and this was not planned. And like, it's okay to be sad and devastated. And, those things are just normal. I mean, even I know for a fact that women who experience unplanned pregnancies even hope that they miscarry sometimes. And, that's a hard thing to talk about, but it's worth talking about because it's a real emotion that women feel, and you shouldn't feel alone in that feeling. So, it's really hard, but I think what I really needed in those first couple days was someone to look at me and say, like, you can do this, and this is a good thing. Just like that guy said to me that day before. I mean, he was the first person who looked at me and said, you can do this. And feeling empowered in that was so critical. I mean, it was the turning point in that story. And I just can't emphasize it enough that you feel so weak and powerless in that situation. And like, you just feel trapped. But it's so important to surround someone with so much love and confidence that, hey, like, this was not planned. And, this isn't the way you saw your life, no doubt. But, good can come out of this. Like, maybe your life is going to unfold in a way that you never imagined, because that's what happened to me. I would have never imagined my life to unfold the way that it has, but it is way better than I ever imagined, and way fuller. And so sometimes, I don't know, my boss always says, God gives us what we need, not what we want.
I like that.
And I just think that, I mean, in my own life, that is so true. I had to heal so many wounds. I know I'm going off topic, but sometimes we have to go through experiences to heal and to grow and to grow in ways that we never thought we needed to. And so anyway, a long-winded answer, I think, congratulations, you can do this. You're not alone. I always tell women, I want you to know that, of course, I'm biased because of my experience. So I will always say, you can do this, and I'll support you in any way that you can. And I will help you figure out all the logistics that you need to figure out to do this. But I will never judge your decision. I would never want a woman to feel judged when I'm speaking to her, and I would never want to push someone in a direction that they wouldn't want to go. But obviously, from my own experience, I always encourage a woman to just embrace that with open arms and hands, even though it's scary. And but the women who I've seen who have done it have just, like, similar experiences, had beautiful babies or are about to give birth and are so excited. And, none of those people ever imagined their life would turn out this way, but it's brought them so much joy too. So, my grandma, my Nonna from Italy, she's an immigrant from Italy, so thick Italian accent. She said to my mom when she found out, she said, she was immediately excited. And my mom was like, what? Like, you're not even upset at all? And she was like, Nancy, death is something to grieve over, but life should always be celebrated. And I just think that
just gave me the chills.
Yeah. And it's so true. And she responded to it, the way that someone really should. Like, that is just the fundamental, anyway. So I would say that would be my advice.
No, that's really great advice. I guess I didn't really think of congratulating as much. And as you said, it's also hard when the mom herself is grieving. I've had that with a few of my friends, that I like that you said to acknowledge also that it's okay to feel the overwhelming and the negative parts of it, because that also is so present too. So it's really good not to dismiss that too. So I love that, the celebration and the acknowledgement. So, and as you were talking too, it's funny that you were talking about being overwhelmed and whatnot. no matter if your pregnancy is planned or
Mhm.
unplanned, I just feel like pregnancy is hard.
Yep.
It's like, it's scary no matter what. So I can't even imagine adding in that additional unplanned part of it. I just, it would just be even scarier. So
Well, either way, you really can't prepare for what's about to happen, right?
yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah, no matter what, it's hard. And yeah, definitely kids change your life for the better, just as you said. I have an 18-month-old and it's the
Mm.
same thing. I just remember being scared and having those all of those emotions, even though she was completely planned. And that's the other thing that I've talked about with some of my friends too. Like even if you do plan a pregnancy and you're pregnant, there's a point in the pregnancy, unless it's just me and my friends, where you're like, what did I do?
Oh, yeah. Oh my
You're
gosh,
like,
it's so true.
especially when it's 9 months pregnant, you're like, I changed my mind. I don't know. I don't want to
Oh
go
my gosh, one of my girlfriends just did that with me. She called me and she's like, "What is going on?" And I'm like, "Don't worry. You'll adjust."
Yeah, so I feel
Yeah,
like
it's
there's,
like a rude awakening.
even though there's some, obviously there's major differences, but I feel like maybe we can connect too on some of the similarities too.
Completely.
So I have heard you say that obviously having your daughter is the best thing, but also one of the hardest things that's happened to you. Can you talk about how it is being a single working mom? And do you have any tips for being a working mom in general? And do you have any philosophy on managing mom guilt? Or, everyone has their different mantra, like you can have it all, you can't have it all, lean in, lean out, all this stuff. I don't know. I see all
Mm,
these people talking
yeah,
about different things, but as you know, it's so hard to be a working mom. I work part-time
yeah.
and even that's really hard. So I would love to hear from you, since obviously you probably have to have a certain philosophy or schedule or whatnot just to make it work as a single working mom.
It's very hard. Well, I do want to mention that the single mom thing sometimes gets a little confusing. I am a single mom, but Renly's dad is in the picture, so he does help, and he picks her up a couple nights a week from the nanny. So I do get a little break there. But in terms of managing work mom life, it's really hard. When I first went back to work 6 months after Renly was born, which I was grateful to have had even that much time with her, I definitely had a really hard time adjusting. Although I really didn't have a choice. I had to make that money for her and to support us. So it was just, I had to accept it very quickly. But I still, gosh, this is a fluctuating answer, to be honest with you. It depends on which day you ask me. um, but I mean, in general, I go through weeks where I have so much guilt because I come home and I don't feel present, or I'm thinking about other things, or I'm on my phone, and there's been a couple times where Renly like bats my phone away and I'm like, oh no, she hates me. So it's really, I've tried to definitely put in a rule where I'm not on my phone around her very much. So I'll like come home and I'll turn my phone upside down for a little while. I always come home and turn on fun music and change my clothes. That's like a really big one for me. Because if I can get out of my work clothes into like comfy clothes, and then no matter what mood I'm in, if I can put on a fun song like Queen, or, like just something I can dance to with my daughter, then it just kind of shakes me out of whatever mood I was
I
in.
love that.
And so there's something about like coming home and just going into mom mode that has really, really worked for me. And then, over time, I've just been really working on being more present, meaning instead of going into the living room and just kind of letting her pick out her toys and I kind of sink into the couch, I will like just sit on the floor and I will actually like pull out some of her toys, and, like I just make an active effort to engage in what she's doing. And that makes me feel better as a working mom. If I can just spend at least 30 minutes just sitting with her and giving her that attention, then I feel more fulfilled at the end of the night. that's something that's been working for me for sure. And then bedtime is really, really important because I kind of have this guilty thing where I get into Renly's crib, which everyone uses me for, but I don't care because it's our like cuddle time. But I get into Renly's crib, and I probably won't be able to keep doing this as she gets bigger. But I get into her crib and I sing her a couple songs and we say prayers together and we talk, and that like really allows me to bond with her. You know, even if I've had a really busy day and I haven't been able, or, you know, I wasn't with her during the evening, that really, really fills me up. And, you know, the biggest thing I've learned about mom guilt and dealing with that, is just fundamentally, if I know that she feels loved, like I can see it in her eyes when she feels loved and she's happy and she's thriving. As long as she feels loved, I'm doing a good job. And that is not a lot to ask from ourselves as mothers, because I think we can all say like, yeah, our children feel pretty loved. And that in and of itself is enough. And we don't need to really overthink it because, you know, I fundamentally believe that everyone is doing their best with the tools that they have. And as long as you feel like you're doing your best, then, you know, you got to just feel like you're enough.
Definitely. I feel like you already answered the final question that we usually ask.
I know, I kind of did.
But I love it so much that, you know, we always, since that is our motto, that there's no way to be a perfect mom, but many ways to be a good one. That is just so true and perfect what you said. And I've noticed that with my daughter too, you know, whenever I'm feeling a little bit of mom guilt for whatever it is, and I just see her face, you know, when she looks at me, just as you were saying, that you can just see it in their eyes. Yeah. It's so, so true. So I love that.
Yeah. I think the most important thing when we get so caught up in all those emotions is just to remember the little things. And I try to just like boil it down to that one thing. Like my, you know, number one job is to love her and support her. And if she feels that, then I'm doing enough, you know, because we're not perfect. And sometimes there's a lot on our minds. And I have actively, like every day I think about this. So this is something that I work on every day because I have a tendency to feel guilt and shame. And so I've just really, really tried to focus in on that and be, you know, content with that.
I would love you to talk a little bit more about how you actively manage, you know, the guilt and shame throughout your day, because I've noticed on your platform back in February that you mention a lot about having a good attitude and managing the attitude throughout the day. And it seems like you have some really practical tips for doing that, and because you do seem to be very intentional about it. So I would love to hear how you are intentional throughout the day.
Yeah. This is another thing that I've been working on a lot because earlier this year, like in the very early part of the year, my boss is a very good friend and mentor to me now. So we had a very blunt offline conversation. I was just getting so wrapped up in the negative and, you know, just kind of turning into that like angry cat lady type profile and just focusing on all the negatives and like, I'm lonely and blah, blah, blah. And he looked at me and he was like, girl, you need to start focusing on the positive. And it hit me like, you know, like really hard because I was like, you're right. And he was like, you need to listen to happy music. You need to get up and say, today is a good day. And it sounds so like simple and silly, but like I actually started to focus on those things and really try to shift my mindset toward gratitude. And there's been a couple other times in my life where I've had to do that. And I talk about one thing that I did shortly after I had Renly. I had a lot of anxiety and I was really struggling with how my life was changing, like productivity wise. And I was someone who just needed to get a lot done. I like to read. I like to learn. I like to go through my to-do list. I like to be thinking deep thoughts. And then you have a baby and you're, so sleep deprived. And,
True.
the only thing you're getting done is just surviving and maybe doing a load of laundry. And so
The mom brain fog.
right? Oh my gosh, that was so hard for me to adjust to. And so I had to really, really try to fix that and try to change my attitude. And so I just made up this, what I now call the sticky note habit. And every night before I went to bed, I had 2 sticky notepads on my bathroom counter with a Sharpie. And on one, I would think about something that I was grateful for. And the other one, I would think of something I was proud of myself for. And so every night I'm brushing my teeth and I'm thinking and I'm reviewing my day in my head and I'm coming up with these things. And then I'd finish and then I'd write them down and put them up on the mirror. So over a month or two, I think I did it for like 2 or 3 months. All these sticky notes are on the mirror. So as I'm brushing my teeth, I'm reading them all. And it was like a constant reminder of all of the things I was grateful for and then all that I was accomplishing. And sometimes I would write, I did a load of laundry or I got through another day. Like they don't need to be big things, but it changed my perspective and it changed the way that I was going to sleep every night. And it really did change my life. And it taught me, after all was said and done, I took down the sticky notes and I think I put them in a memory box because I can't throw anything away. But I realized that it was more than just the sticky notes. Like it actually had given me a habit that I've carried with me since then. And so I've thought about doing it a couple more times when I've started to lose that habit, but the tool is still inside of me. I just have to kind of like carry it out a little.
Right.
And so anyway, so when my boss did this to me, I was like, okay, I need to get back to that place. I need to be grateful. And during those times in my life, I really try to just be grateful for the little things, like silly little things. Like I get into my bed and I'm like, wow, this is so comfortable. Like, thank you, God, for this bed. Like, thank you for everything that we have. And it really does sound kind of silly, but it's those little tiny thoughts. If you're having negative thoughts all day, like it's going to filter the way that you think and the way you see yourself and the way that you treat other people. But the more that you kind of switch those thoughts, it just, I don't know, it's transformative. Another thing that I've done is I've really tried to, I can, be in like a stressful situation and, I'm like on the brink of just getting really mad and then getting in a bad mood. So I try to like really focus in on that moment where I'm about to get into a bad mood. And then I make a conscious decision that I'm not going to get into a bad mood. Like it's that simple. I'm like, no, I am not going to let this ruin the rest of my day or the next hour or whatever it is. I'm just going to let it roll off my back and move on, because being angry takes a lot more energy than just letting something go and forgiving and loving. And that's been another thing that I've worked on that has allowed me to deal with stress and situations where I have a tendency to get angry and upset. And then honestly, the biggest thing that changes my life is prayer. If I can start every day with 15 minutes, I'm a way better person. I can't say I do that every day. It's really hard because sometimes I can't get up earlier than my daughter because she beats me to my alarm clock. And
I love doing that, don't they?
Right. I'm like, really? But the times I've gotten up before her and I've just taken 15 minutes, sometimes it turns into like 25 because I'm so at peace, but take 15 minutes, just close my eyes and breathe. And, in my own meditative prayer, like I ask God to enter into any pain or suffering that I have in my heart or any heaviness. And, it's just, at the very least, it's a very, peaceful experience. And it just kind of grounds me in what's important, and it just makes me feel calm to then enter into the day that may not be so calm. But sometimes I, just feel like, wow, like this is the thing that's been on my heart, that's been really hurting me. Or, this is something that's unresolved, or this is an area that I need to grow, or I could have handled this situation better. And honestly, I don't sit there and ask God for things. I just try to listen. And, so, I don't know if you're spiritual or anyone else listening is spiritual, but that works for me and it fits my lifestyle, and, has just been something that if I go months at a time where I don't pray, I just kind of start to lose it. So it's the one consistent thing in my life that has kept me sane and as, humble as I can be in all my humanness, and, has just helped me grow as a person. And I guess the biggest thing that I try to be is like a calm vessel through stormy waters. That is like my goal in life. Because life is just rocky and things get thrown at us. But if we are calm and centered through that, then I find that I am less reactive and, just more loving in my responses, more empathetic in my listening, and I'm just a better friend and mother and, whatever else I need to be, coworker. So anyway, that was a very long answer, but that is something I think about a lot. So I appreciate the question.
I love each of those examples that you gave. And it's interesting that, that little ritual that you went through for the gratitude. I have read several studies that said that gratitude is something that's learned and you have to practice it. And so that's something that I've thought of, saying, how can, myself practice gratitude more, or me and my family practice gratitude more. And I'm going to have to try that and pass that tip on, because to be a more grateful person, that's exactly what they say. You have to actually practice it. It's not something that's necessarily naturally learned or whatnot.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I tried the journaling thing. I journal, but I tried the like write down something you're grateful for every day. But what doesn't work for me is like the way that my brain works is like, if it's out of sight, it's out of mind. So what worked for me with the sticky notes is like, it was always in front of me and I could never forget to do it because I brush my teeth every night and every morning. And it was just a constant reminder in my face, like bright pink and orange sticky notes, So I don't know. It really worked for me. I'd be really curious if you try it. Let me know what you think.
No, I'm going to have to definitely try that. It's funny because it reminds me of something, a little bit of what I did. So I'm an attorney, and so I took the bar actually 7 years ago, almost to the day, because I think they're taking the bar in California or today was the last day. I think now it's only 2 days. When I took it, it was 3. But I did something similar. I wrote a bunch of Bible verses on notes that were kind of inspirational, everywhere that I was studying and in my room and whatnot. And I just saw them every single time I looked up from studying.
Yes, I love that. I'm such a visual person. So I love that you did that. I actually should do something like that. Because I read so many great things and I'm like, oh, I got to remember that. And I like save it in my phone and never look at it again.
I really appreciate you sharing your story and your journey. I was getting chills so many times when you're talking and tears in my eyes, because I just think your journey and story of becoming a mom and, even your journey that you're in now is just so beautiful. And I'm so thankful for you sharing that with us. And I know everyone listening will have so much to take away from it too.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. And yeah, if anyone listening wants to read my full story, I've written it on my website, which is backinfebruary.com. And you can find me on Instagram at backinfebruary_. So yeah, just sharing my little journey there, and it's slow moving. It's part-time, but, just trying to get the message out that any unplanned unexpected change. You're not alone in it, and you can get through it. And, just trying to show that example of joy and unexpected motherhood.